Senator Payman.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Good afternoon, sorry. The budget notes that the government will fund resettlement in Nauru of non-citizens who do not have the right to remain in Australia following the High Court's decision in NZYQ, and that while the deal is being finalised, the appropriations made for this purpose are not for publication, as I understand. I was wondering if you could provide details of the agreement with Nauru, including where these people will be held on Nauru and how much money is being paid to Nauru.
So, Senator, Mr Thomas will help me with some of the details, but first to make the broad point that people are not being held in detention on Nauru. They are moving to Nauru with freedom of movement in Nauru. And so the government of Nauru has been ensuring that there is accommodation in the community for the people who are transferred there. And I believe the details of the settlement are confidential. And we have a PII. And we have a PII claim around that under consideration.
And just around freedom of movement, does that mean they're free to work, study, be involved in the community? What does that look like?
Yes, Senator. So the individuals will be granted a long-term stay visa in Nauru, which gives them express rights of freedom of movement in the community, work rights, etc. So that's all codified in the visa regulations in Nauru as well.
And so what is sort of the end goal with a long-term stay visa in terms of, is there any pathways to permanency? Are they able to come to Australia? What's the situation?
Senator, in effect, they would be residents in Nauru, and their future pathways will be a matter for the Nauruan government.
Do we know what other countries the government is negotiating with or has negotiated with around the same purpose of resettling non-citizens?
Senator, again, at the previous estimates, we took a similar question on notice for a PII claim, and we'll take it on notice again to make a similar claim.
Would you be able to share how much money may have been allocated for this resettlement?
No, Senator, again,
PII.
we'll take that on notice to consider PII.
That's fine. My understanding is that there's been an allocation for offshore detention that's increased by $200 million from last year to $1.37 billion, with over $1 billion given to management and training corporations. Can you explain the reason why the allocation was made?
I'll pass to my colleague, Mr. Watson.
Thank you, Senator. James Watson, Group Manager of Immigration Programs Group. Senator, the contract value for regional processing as at the 31st of January this year for MTC, the contract value was $421 million, and for IHMS, the contracted service provider for our medical services on Nauru, is $94.3 million.
Yeah, no, I understand. Thank you for providing the numbers, but I'm wanting to understand the reason why there's been an increase in the amount from, by $200 million since last year. Why was there an increase in the allocation?
Senator Joe Feld, Acting First Assistant Secretary, Regional Programs Division. So through the annual budget process, an allocation is made to the program, to the Offshore Asylum Seeker Management Program under 2.4. And so for the 25-26 financial year, that amount was allocated, that additional amount was allocated as you've described.
What does that additional amount cover, essentially, or what was the need?
So the allocation is made based on the expected numbers of transferees that will be on Nauru. Whilst it is an additional amount, it is comparable to previous years in the previous financial year in terms of the amount of money that has been allocated for regional processing. But I do have the Chief Finance Officer here to add further detail.
Yes, Andrew Harvey, Chief Finance Officer. So I believe you're referring to page 38 of our portfolio budget statements, and there it shows that for 24-25, the year we're in right now, it's budgeted at 575, and so it's correct that it's been increased in this year's budget by, I've got 267 here, and that takes it to 580,747, which is the same level as the current year. So it's what Mr. Fell was just saying is it's reviewed on an annual basis for requirements at the time.
We know that spending on offshore processing has blown out to $12.1 billion since offshore detention was started in 2012, with $580 million to Nauru in the 2025-26 budget. How does the department justify the warehousing of people seeking asylum offshore at this cost, in breach of international obligations and to the detriment of their health and welfare? Because we've seen countless reports come out regarding the deteriorating health of people that are kept on Nauru and Manus Island.
So, Senator, it's been, as you're aware, a policy now of over a decade that is part of the operation to ensure the integrity of Australia's borders, and that's a decision of government and successive
I understand
governments.
it's a policy of a decade, but doesn't mean it's the right policy, and it is definitely not in line with our international obligations. It's just, as a department, you're the experts, you're crunching the numbers, you're seeing that this isn't really improving the situation. So just how do we justify just the rising costs? Because it's not good enough that just because it's been done this way for the last decade that we continue doing it, right? Einstein called it insanity. That's a definition of insanity.
Senator Payman, you've got a question that
why doesn't Australia just quickly process their claims for asylum onshore in an efficient and humane way and direct the money allocated to offshore processing towards resettlement services or humanitarian aid?
So, Senator, they're really questions of government policy. I just repeat that regional processing is a critical part of Operation Sovereign Borders.
Minister, would you like to add why Australia doesn't do the right thing by processing the claims for asylums onshore, which is in line with the Labor Party platform?
Well, many applications are processed onshore.
I understand, but in an efficient and humane way, keeping people in limbo and abandoning them on islands, spending $12.1 billion and counting doesn't sound really humane.
Well, as I say, many applications are processed onshore.
But you're really not answering my question, are you?
Senator Payman.
I rest my case. Thank you.
Okay.